So peace was good, everybody. Oh, that's what's up. That's what's up. So we're going to go ahead and tap in. We're going to do a energy forecast for December. Sometimes every month we do that. Last month we did one here, and we'll go ahead and mainly so because I know that a lot of us are at a pivot in our lives, and there's a growing interest to understand what the energetic flow is like. That's moving in the direction as we make these pivots in life. And so as we're pivoting, it's always good to have some insight in terms of what's going on energetically so we can acknowledge those things and maneuver accordingly. So, as you know, I'm Satori Seals. We do soul to soul conversations. And we're going to not talk about relationships today. We're going to kind of talk about the energetic forecast for the month of December here in 2025. And so, what we're going to do is tap in. So feel free to put your comments in the chat. Also, those y'all, if y'all see anybody trolling and making, just irrelevant remarks and stuff, please remove it and delete it so we can keep everything positive and keep everything moving. So what I want to do is get into the month of December 2025. Okay, and so first of all, the month of December in the Living Soul Numerology system, we understand it's the month really centering around the ego. There's a lot of ego clearing that should be happening occurring during this month, or a lot of reflection. But most importantly, it's a month really about your self importance. And so, just in a very macro sense, a macro view, um, year in, year out, when we come into the month of December, we should be able to revisit the importance of ourselves, understanding what we need or those things are being met. And then is our sense of self importance pulling us to be outside the pocket. And when it gets out of pocket, that's when we start having ego issues, right? And so, but ego in itself is not a bad thing. And if y'all want any more insight about the ego, you can go to my Patreon, Living Soul, and go into the shop and grab Ego Itself. And I really go into and talk about the ego in terms of the dynamics from a metaphysical understanding. Very practical, but very in line with the universal principles and laws, so you can understand the ego. None of us is separate from the ego, and it's and a lot of y'all know they've been kind of tuning in some of the relationship commentary. I often mention about we have to learn how to interact and relate around each other's ego. Somehow, that's always overlooked, but at the end of the day, it's time will tell to make you realize I need to develop a mastery how to deal around egos that's beyond myself. I need to know how to dance around and dance with other people's self importance along with myself. And so, a lot of times for a lot of us, that's a challenge, that's hard. And then some type of connections and blends or engagements or things we entertain is not really that big of an issue. But in the month of December, whether you are aware of it or not, it's going to bring attention to that. Okay. And so this year, the three falls up under the eighth house, and the eighth house is acknowledged as the ambiguity house. And so it's really about clarity. It's really about how do you handle ambiguities? That's the first question. A lot of us don't like uncertainty, but uncertainty is a part of life. Uncertainty um, is something that we have to know how to navigate through. Unfortunately, a lot of times the series of uncertainties sometimes uh, freezes us to make any significant moves in our lives. And so the month of December is a great time to kind of make us revisit where are we frozen at because our ego um, is not receiving the confirmation or the affirmation or the validation that it needs from what is really going on. And so this is why December is a very time to really it's a slowdown period anyways. It's a slowdown period so you can begin to really to reflect. We know when things get more slower, it's easy to see and recognize things. When we're all sped up and we're moving and we're in high thrust, we can't pay attention. We can't see what's really necessary, really relevant, really at that time. And so this year, like I said, it falls in summer, falls up under the eighth house, and the ambiguity house is very active. Okay, and so in relationship with the three, it's creating energetically a we refer to as an imbalance. So that means it's going to be challenges around growth. So the areas that is calling us for is to rebalance and correct areas that's out of balance in our lives. And the primary thing is what's important to us because if the things that are important to us are out of balance, then it's going to affect our ego health. Okay. And so the wisdom of, you say, the universe, the cosmos, it has already built in. There's periods and times where we need to revisit and to evaluate where we stand in conjunction with within ourselves and with others and with the environments and the whole scheme in the phenomenon of life. Okay, and those that figure out how to move in those, in the right rhythm, life is more welcoming to them. And some others, just life is very tumultuous. Okay, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to a choice in terms of how we are trying to navigate. And so, having insights, energetic insights, and blueprints, and understanding things forecasted helps us to be able to move in times of need. So, the elements that are very prevalent for this month that's leading the influence is going to be the metal, air, and the fire. And so, in reference to the certain areas in life, any areas in life that is led or governed by the air, metal, or fire is really going to receive a lot of scrutiny, a lot of energetic attention to sit there and look and uncover where we are imbalanced at. And one of these areas is going to be the area of self-love. Okay, so this year in 2025, interesting, last year, it was a lot about our core values. What's the core of us? And it was in the polarity. So it's kind of like, it was really investigating our beliefs and our value systems. This year is really um, looking at how we deal with change, looking at our attitude of our willingness to make adjustments, right? Our willingness to be able to recognize the redundancies in our lives and willing to transmute it. And so it's a little bit of a different emphasis this year. And that all centers around self-concept, right? And in relation to the metal has a direct connection and it oversees the area of self-love. How do we hold position in self-love? And so self-love is not getting your nails done, getting your hair done, or getting your beard manicured. That's self-care. That's of course a good gesture. But self-love is really making sure that love and self are in harmony. And so there's some different pursuits that we begin to look at to help to make sure if the love and the self is in harmony. And so one of those areas is purpose. Are you moving intentional in your life? If you're not, your ego is already not able to make effective, consistent, and concise decisions to benefit where you really are. You're always going to be floundering, whether you realize it or not. Even if you think, quote unquote, you have flares of success or whatever it might be, inside yourself, you're going to feel unfulfilled because you're not aligned. And that's an imbalance. So there's a wrong thing there. There's a misalignment that can occur. So the energy for the month of December is going to flip that up and try to see where you at. Are you aligned with your purpose? The other aspect we talk about self-love is your pursuit of spirituality. In other words, what is your diet for truth? What is your diet and acumen and willingness to self-reflect, to identify things? Are there certain patterns, are there certain barriers, are there certain cycles going on in my life that doesn't match the truth, that doesn't match my self-image, doesn't match my sense of importance? Does it cater to my virtues or does it cater to my vices? Does it keep me always in a space of um, pursuing gratification with no balance? That all becomes looked at. There's the energy bringing our attention to that. Okay, so this is all going on for the month of December. Okay, and so in the area of self-love, it's also going to look at how you pursue empowerment. This is very interesting because a lot of us, how we pursue empowerment is different. Some of us will willing to manipulate, you know, coerce things to serve our own interests. You know, and the reason I'm pointing to this is because up under the ego in the area of life, it's all about the ego is very easy if it's out of pocket to think all about itself and not think about its role and responsibility to others in aspects of contributions. And so there has to be an aspect in that in regards to the ego to keep the ego self-regulated. When the ego becomes too occupied with itself is the reason why we all identify people having what ego issues. But ego in itself is not that. When the ego is able to see past its own interests, the ego is functional where it needs to be because it's necessary, because the ego is a part of your and I's identity and drives our persona. Okay. And so when we lack the ability or we lack or we're very uh deficient to begin to see outside ourselves and be considerate of things outside ourselves and also to make contributions to that we can affect, we will find ourselves becoming imbalanced. And so the energy of this month is really going to look at that. It's going to look at and self-check you like, you was able to help the situation. You was able to help empower someone over here. You was able to provide inspiration over here, but you chose not to. That's a violation of your responsibility to make contributions. And so if you have a series of that accumulated, especially throughout this year, of being so totally occupied in your space and focus on yourself, it's very easy, especially if you're in hustle mode. You think about trying to make things happen for yourself, but you're overlooking what you can contribute to others. You're being paused. And the energy is going to make you visit that. You're going to feel discomfortable throughout December if you are not, if you're not making contributions that you know that you can. Okay. So it's going to look at that aspect of your self-love, right? It's going to look at how you pursue empowerment. Are you willing to take ownership of your life? And is it a consistent attitude that you have to make sure you are doing necessary things like to self-educate yourself, to bring yourself to a point where you are of value to yourself and to others? For example, when you enter into a space or you're involved in some type of dynamic, do you bring difficulty or do you bring ease? Do you improve value or you devalue things? It's really that simple. And a lot of us be like, oh, some people walk around like, oh my God, they here. Oh man, I get you bring devalue. You shift morale to not be improved. That's the issue with empowerment's reflection really on you. And so if you're one of those people, if you're an irritant, or if you thrive in being trivial, you know, in those things, this is not going to be a good month for you because you're going to be getting slapped in the face very often with that type of energy that you project out, that you might not have been really mindful of. And so this is your time to visit it and to recalibrate and to neutralize those the really are self-sabotaging behaviors. When you begin to add time to that, if you operate in that space like that, you'll find yourself isolated. You'll find yourself not being able to thrive because empowerment has a social component to it, which is interesting, which is why the 3 falls up under the 8. The 8 is social. The 8 appeals and focuses on the social part of ourself, of the soul. And so there's a social aspect, there's a social connection that's in reference to you being able to prosper and you're be able um, to harmonize and maintain rapport with people. When you are deficient, you lack, everybody talks about emotional intelligence, but when we are deficient in our social intelligence, um, people begin to fade from you. And so this is a month where these things will come to light for you. Some people might tell you some hard truths about yourself, and it's warranted. Why? Because that's what it's bringing attention to. The metal is active. The metal, so whether you acknowledging the truth, if you have been in imbalances or create imbalance in other people's lives, you're gonna see some truth tellers come to you. It's the energetic environment is set for that to come to you during this month. So you might get hit with some hard hitting truths. Okay. And so it just is what it is. Nothing personal. It's just a reflection and an attractive invitation of what you fail to recognize, because actually that is a moral and a behavioral redundancy that you're operating in that you failing to correct. And so this month is going to bring the auto correction in its own unique formal way. Okay, let me know if this is making sense to y'all. All right. And so in the area of self-love, that this energy is going to be self-respecting and begin bringing attention to during December 2025. It's also going to look at, excuse me, I'm sorry, your preservation, how you're pursuing your preservation. And I'm going to say this because especially um, in the social media atmosphere, especially in the area of relationships, it's very interesting to hear um, how people, their attitude about preservation is revealing itself in certain arguments, but no one's really pinpointing and being like, that's an issue. Because when you believe that other people are more responsible for your preservation, you actually have a beginning phases of psychosis. You know what I'm saying? You have an aspect to yourself where you are detached from reality. Okay. And so if you're detached, you got areas in your life where you're detached from reality, this month is going to make you realize it. It's going to make you realize it, and it probably come through the areas of relationships, in the area of you feeling emotionally fragmented. Why I say emotionally fragmented? Because this month the water score is very low. Matter of fact, it's inviting the shadow. So emotional fragmentation, the areas where you have right here where you're disillusioned at. So people that are very disillusioned, people that want to be overly, overly positive and do the what we call, I guess they call spiritual bypassing, you're gonna feel it this month because it's time to take your heads out the cloud. It's time for you to stop trying to spin everything to be super spiritual, the super thing. Well, this happened to me, so it must have been a spiritual curse. No, it just no. It's something really dealing with you. It's something deeply embedded, inside you, or there's something locked inside your auric field that's inviting certain things that you're being called to address. Right? Why internalize, I actualize. What I internalize, I actualize. And when I actualize, I begin to realize. And in my realization, I begin to seek that thing. And what I seek becomes the thing that's seeking me. And that can be translated as your energetic field. And so some of these bad occurrences, that's a series of things happening to you. You got to look at what you're internalizing and what you're actualizing and what you're realizing. Ooh, that was free. That was some coaching stuff right there. I can go no deeper on that. Take that and run with that one. All right. Um, so in this time, it's bringing attention to that energetically. It's what is set and designed. And so we talk about energy. There's typically a design. There's a emanation. And so what I'm doing is breaking down from the forces that governs life and tap it into, and there's also a cycle. So there's forces, there's cycles and emanations, and there's certain attributes that are coming that are more dominant or more prevalent or more active. They're more energized to operate during this month. So these things I'm talking about, these are not just theories. These are just what the forces surrounding this month during this time space or this particular cycle of of time, and we're just kind of capturing and translating it how that affects us in the human context of our interaction. Okay. Um, so when we look at that, so that's the metal. And then the area of air. So we talk the area of air is talking about relationships. And so in simplicity, keep that real short, I like to call it the agreement versus disagreement ratio. The things that you relate with, and I'm not just talking about just your romantic interests. I'm talking about just relations all across the board. I actually did a audio inside the Patreon, so I'm kind of going to piggy what I mentioned there and share it here because I just feel led to. Um, I'll use an example, right? It's about the relationship part is about what I agree with versus what I disagree with, and how often am I in environments that are more agreeing and confirming how I feel about myself, what I feel important about myself, that matches my ego? Or am I in situation environments where it's not matching my ego and it's not matching really my importance of myself? And if I'm constantly in environments where it's not doing that, then I'm actually vested into things of disagreement in my life. And I actually am probably what? Internalizing that, actualizing that, and realizing that. And I'm energizing that. And so if I'm energizing that for a long period of time, it's going to create a cycle. And so if I got a contra cycle that's not matching the congruence of what I really am in my heart and in my self-image and who I really am and in line with my purpose, I have an issue. Now we got to look at a boomerang effect. We got some things right here. So this month, the energy is going to bring attention to that. Okay. It's going to bring attention to that. It's going to make us visit that. And then the question is going to come down, do you have enough uh, ego strength and ability to be neutral to neutralize that cycle that you energized? If not, then it's going to continue to grow because now you're in what? You're operating in a space of avoidance. And what you avoid, you grow. So if you go ahead and ignore it this month if you want to, it'll come back around and visit again in March. And then if you ignore it again there, you'll continue to grow. And so these will be different things you got going on right here. And you'll just stay on this different cycle. And depending on what it is, it's going to be the thing that's your own personal nemesis. Okay. And so out of the wisdom that comes from the universe, it wants us to thrive, right? It's have these certain moments, these certain milestones to prompt us to be in recognition and reflection, to recognize these things that we can deal with at the root form. Or if it's growing, to go ahead and stop the growth of it. So a lot of that activity is going on. So in the area of relationships, like I was saying, so let's say you go to the grocery store. Does the atmosphere and the vibe at that time, does it really match? Are you in agreement with it or are you in disagreement with it? Right? If you go to the gas station, are you in agreement with it or disagreement with it? Or you go to like a little social setting, a little social invitation thing, are you in agreement or disagreement with it? How many times, day in, day out, are you going to places that's really agreeing with you or you really are in a disagreement with? And some of us are unconscious of that until something like Mitch right now or somebody else will bring to light to monitor that. So this month, you're going to start maybe feeling yourself become a little more aware of, you know what, I don't know, I don't even like when I go here. Why is it important? Because actually, that's a part of your ego health. It supports your ego health to make sure that your relationships are in more congruence with you versus in incongruence. It's important that your ego is more in a resonance space versus a dissonance space. Okay. And so this month is inviting us to visit those areas if we have imbalances in there. And it's prompting us to do what? To restore the balance. And so we look at the area of, with the fire, because that's very active and is driving things going on. It's going to look at our leisure, taking time out. I know this year and last year has been very, very pressing for a lot of people. And sometimes we lose sight of the importance of leisure because sometimes we think it's something separate, like it's a reward. No, it's a need. It's a need. And this year is bringing to scope like it's an ego need. The leisure you need to have is very instrumental in your self-soothing, your self-affirming, and your personal validation that you need. Leisure gives you a sense of personal validation. Okay. And where you place that leisure is different because we're all different. So that's the aspect of the gratification pursuit inside the ego. You don't need to feel guilty in terms of how you pursue gratification. Gratification is only an issue if it's growing devices in your life that's got you stuck and is working against you. But if your gratification is really are serving more of your virtues, then what's the problem? And that even includes sex. Because I know everybody, well, oh, that even includes that. Because sex is not really a vice. What is that gratification leading to cause the vice, though? That's what you got to focus on. Okay. And so these areas right here is what this month is really targeting energetically and bringing our attention to. This month is also in reference to the air, metal, and fire. It's great for problem solving. So a lot of us that just maybe I just need to really get clear and try to address some things. You're getting an extra boost energetically to help you to maybe come to some conclusions, some resolutions. Is a great time for that. Um, Getting clear, definitely that. Um, like I said, it's a lot about truth this month. It's really about facing some truths that you've been ignoring. What truths have you been ignoring that you know that's been going on, but you keep ignoring it? Okay. If you are ignoring truths and you're favoring untruths, you're going to feel some, some discordant energy against you. Um, with all that in mind, the creativity, especially with all the changes going on economically. And so, for a lot of people that are in Generation X or older, it's very important to think outside the box and really tap into your creative gene because some things that you're going to need to address, and that's another issue. I didn't mention that. I mentioned it, in the audio on the Patreon, so I can go there. But you're going to need, you're going to need to leverage creativity. So this is probably going to be a month this year is going to help you gain some insight on how you can leverage your creative gene or partner with creative things to help swing the pendulum around the issues that's causing imbalances in your life at. Okay. And the reason why I mention that is because actually when we talk about forces and energy now, I talk a lot about universal principles and laws, and I want to make sure we understand that they are actually forces. And so the force that we identify as polarity is going to bring a lot of attention to the extremes in our life that's creating the imbalances so that way we can swing that pendulum back to the middle and neutralize. A lot of us have a lot of things going on in our lives that's okay. If it's not going to be totally resolved, we're being highly encouraged to at least to neutralize it. Because once you neutralize it, now you have regained your power. And by regaining that power, you now can sit there and entertain and energize. What I internalize, I realize I energize, right? So now I can energize the thing that I desire to experience that matches my self importance, that revolves around my self love. And I can put enough energy around the place and try to institute or invite or conjure up new cycles or repair cycles to keep it moving in that direction. So the pendulum is favoring now more of favorable things in my life versus unfavorable. Okay. And so this is what this month will be, and we're early in the month. So we got, it's going to bring a lot of that, really going on. Okay. And so let me see what some of y'all got to say right here. But this is really what's really going on for this month is really getting clear and restoring balance to the areas that we need. I will let a lot of y'all know we are, if you want to get plugged in, I highly encourage you to join me on Patreon. Actually, when this comes up, there's a description you can tap into and get into that. We're going to get into Winter Center and we're going to really focus on um, how we're moving forward in 2026, but not just focus on next year, but actually 5 years or more out, and really going to set. I'm really going to be diving into. So people going to need you need to be able to enroll and register because there's some work to be done. We're going to create some different reports to how you'll move forward in the first quarter of next year. You're going to get um, a weekly forecasting dashboard and kind of see what that layout where it's showing you how the energy is going to be laid out for you. And we're going to encourage people to use the dashboard throughout the whole year to really help with. A lot of people talk about goal setting. Like y'all know me, I don't do goal setting. Actually, I don't like hearing goal setting. I'm about result planning and result execution. And so we're going to look at the results. If you want some insight, I highly encourage, especially everyone that's a part of the, in the Patreon membership, go ahead and get Winter Center if you don't have Winter Center. You need to get Winter Center because we're going to be tapping into Winter Center and begin to actualize and going through the work to prepare for the new year. Because we know that this January is not the new year. We're trying to spend now into spring to prepare us to be able to launch and move in different directions and stuff that we need to go that we see fit for ourselves. All right, so that's what's up. So let's see what's kind of going on here. Oh, thank you. Petty Betty's gonna be hurt this month. Yeah, if you petty, this ain't a good month. Okay. Okay. So that's what's up. So as like I know, more in-depth stuff is not shared on the public. More in-depth stuff is shared inside the community on the Patreon. So if y'all are members there, you'll get access to certain things. If you want more additional insight, you'll climb up in the tiers. All right. So this is what's up for December 25. This is the energetic report. Feel free to share this. Let's do it over and over again if you want and stuff like that. But in the meantime, it will be available here on YouTube for a little while, and then we'll have it available also inside, the Patreon community. All right, for everyone. Okay, so that's what's up. I appreciate y'all chiming in. That's what's up. One love.